I'm Ariel Rose, and you're watching Composure Under Fire.
Hey travelers, welcome back. If you're interested in becoming a flight attendant, this video is for you. Today we talk with Ariel, a flight attendant, and she tells us everything. We learn about her experience, training, education requirements, a day in her life. Travelers, this is an interview that you do not want to miss. But before we begin this video, make sure you smash that like button, smash the subscribe button for more content like this. Also, I released the e-course. Be sure to check it out. I go over all things travel and careers in international affairs. The link is in the description box below. All right, travelers, let's begin today's video. Ariel, what is your story? How did you become a flight attendant?
I actually never thought I was going to be a flight attendant. It wasn't actually until after that my mom was like, oh, that's the job I always dreamt about doing. It kind of just fell into my lap. I actually became a flight attendant during the pandemic, ironically enough. So I'm about 2 years in to my career as a flight attendant. I've now been with 2 companies. I've changed companies. I was with my first one. I went to training in February of 21. So the industry was just starting to kind of make a comeback. So starting into hiring frenzies, definitely more domestic flying was starting to come back more than like international flying. And so a friend of mine, she had been a flight attendant. I had recently lost a position that I was working in marketing during the pandemic and wasn't really sure what I was going to do next. I actually started applying to grad programs. I had no intention, really didn't want to go back to school, but didn't know what else I was going to do. So I had a friend that was like, you'd be a good flight attendant. She used to be a flight attendant and she had full intentions of getting back into the industry once it came back up. So I was applying to flight attendant positions in grad school at the same time. I had an interview with the grad school. I got accepted on a Friday, and then I got the job offer from an airline on a Monday. And I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, take the job offer. You can always go back to school. So that's what I did. I took the job offer, and now I would never look back. So yeah.
Where are some of the places that you go?
As a flight attendant, the company that I'm at now, the company I was at before was a regional airline. So most people don't know regional airlines, which I didn't really know regional airlines until I got into the industry myself. But there we only flew to Canada and Mexico. So I actually never did any of those trips actually. By the time I started, it was very far and few between when those would happen. But now being at the airline I'm at currently, we fly to more international destinations. We don't fly to Asia or Europe, but we do fly through Central America and the Caribbean. And so I've done a few of those just as turns. So I didn't stay overnight. And then I've done one international overnight with my company in Costa Rica. So that's as far as it's been. As far as doing international while working, it typically goes more senior. So in aviation, everything works off of seniority. And so the longer you've been there, the more autonomy you have with your schedule. And so there's some flight attendants that maybe all they do is our Hawaii trips, or they may only do our Costa Rica or our Aruba. They're only going to do those because they've been there forever and they have the ability to do that now. But for newer people, we work what we're told, more so.
How is it becoming a flight attendant? Is it hard to become it? And what is the hiring process like?
Is it hard? I don't think it's necessarily hard. The hardest part is getting through training. The hardest part might be getting hired, followed by getting training. It can be difficult to get hired, but I think it doesn't have to be. I say that because you have to know what airline you want to go for, which can be hard if you're just now starting in the industry and you don't know, what airline you want to work for. But every airline has its kind of token flight attendant. There's certain characteristics that each carrier cares about that if you exude that during the interview process, you're more likely to get hired. But those characteristics at one company may not be and often aren't what another carrier wants. And so if you're going for, a carrier that you think is great, but you don't know if you're going to be a great fit, you may have a difficult time getting hired by that specific carrier. But I think it's important to kind of do that research on the airlines. You know, most people just know the big three, you know, the legacies, but there's plenty more airlines that you can work for. And so looking at, you know, even going on YouTube, seeing what other people that have worked for them and no longer work for them or are currently working for them, you know, looking at their values. Each company usually has around 4 to 5 like values that they openly broadcast and tell you, and those are good to have like written down in a corner when you're going through your interview process, just as a good little tip, so you can kind of use those things. But there's some airlines that are a little more quirky, some that are really more button up. You need to be really sophisticated, really in a box, nothing outside of it. And you kind of have to know where on that spectrum you fall, and that might help you figure out how to more easily get through the hiring process.
So you get hired, and then what is the training process like?
So depending on what airline that you're at, you're going to be gone from 4 to 8 weeks for training. And wherever headquarters is at, if you know depending on what airline you work for, you're going to go to their headquarters city. And it's like being in a crash course. Basically, it's like being in a quarter, because it's not like a semester. It's almost like being in a quarter crash course of university. If you've been to college, I feel like it's almost a little bit easier to get through training because it feels like that. You're sitting in class with lectures, literally PowerPoint to death. You know, you need to be able to take notes. You need to be able to retain information quickly. You have to be able to, you know, quiz or test every couple of days, depending on the airline, to every few weeks. But you're going to go for a month. The airline will cover your expenses to get to training. While you're in training, you're going to be in a hotel. That all is going to be taken care of for you. Some carriers pay during training, some don't. Some might give you a card for meals though. If they don't pay, some might do both. It depends. But the actual training process, typically at least minimum 4 weeks. So expect to be gone for at least a month. And it's a crash course. I mean, you're there for hours every day getting information in. And what I tell people is like 90% of what you learn in training, you never want to use. The majority of training is emergency situations. So it's if there's a medical on board, hijackings, bombs, if we're to crash over water or if we crash on lands, like we go through every possible scenario in hopes that we never have to use that knowledge. Yeah. You know, we're trained to get every single passenger on our plane off the aircraft in 90 seconds flat if we are to crash. That is the standard. You have to get every passenger off in 90 seconds. And there are some aircrafts that, you know, fit, you know, 175 plus people, you know. So it's so interesting what people think of flight attendants because, you know, we're like air waitresses, but the training is very, very intense. But like I said, it's stuff that we hope we never have to use.
Does someone need a certain education level to be a flight attendant?
No, you would need your high school diploma or a GED minimum, but you don't need a college degree, although it makes it maybe more competitive in a way. And if you want to, sometimes people forget like airlines are huge companies with 1,000 departments. Like if you ever want to move through the company, you may need that extra schooling. I mean, if you know that being a flight attendant is your end all be all and that's all you ever want to do, which you may not even realize until you're in the industry. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe I want to go into admin and things like that. That's maybe where it would be beneficial to have a higher degree, but to be a flight attendant in particular, to be an in-flight, you just need a high school diploma.
You talked about it earlier, but what are 4 or 5 characteristics of a good standout flight attendant?
Characteristics of a good flight attendant. Be like a palm tree, baby. Flow with the wind and be flexible because your life now belongs to the airline, low key. So you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to accept changes quickly. You have to be good under pressure. You have to have good hospitality because you're dealing with people, thousands of people a day. Those are definitely things that you're going to have to be equipped with because it's the highest level of being in people's faces at 5 a.m. At 5 a.m., at 2 a.m., at after they've been delayed for 6 hours, after we've had to divert and people are not going to be able to make it home for Christmas Day. I mean, any and everything. Last Christmas, we diverted was it Christmas Day? The day before Christmas, Christmas Eve, we had 2 diversions in the air. That flight was supposed to be about an hour and a half. It was 4 hours and they did not land when they were supposed to. Things happen. You have to be able to deal with people even in those instances because the pilots aren't doing it. The pilots, they'll come over the PA, but you're in front of those people. You're physically there with them. They're staring you in the eye while they're asking you why they're not landing where they're supposed to be landing. And so you have to be able to be quick on your feet. You have to be able to keep people calm and you have to be able to keep yourself calm. Things can happen, but you got to be a palm tree. You just got to flow with it. Just bend with it and be able to go with it for sure.
What are some of the challenges of being a flight attendant?
The challenges of being a flight attendant, when you're starting the pay, like a lot of people that are coming from other careers, this is really, I get also asked all the time, like, what did you do before being a flight attendant? And really, this is my only true career. I graduated, December of 19. The world shut down 3 months later. 2.5 months later, I didn't know what I was going to do. I don't use my degree at all. I have a background in science and medicine. I was going to go into marketing. Like nothing was making sense. Nothing was aligning. And so this was really the only career that I've been in. Other things have just been jobs. But if you've been in a career where you've been able to have maybe a salary or something, you're going to end up getting a pay cut. Flight attendants, our full time is 72 hours a month. Most people work more than that in 2 weeks. So that's one thing that can be challenging to people is how the pay is just set up. I think it makes sense to have side gigs as a flight attendant if you need the money. There's a lot of people that keep their jobs that do serving or drive Uber, things to supplement their income because while in time, the pay is very good. When you start out, it is not. And that's just the true reality of it. And I'm sure there's other careers that maybe fall along those same lines as well. But that's definitely a challenge when you start out. Depending on the airline you're at, you might have 24-hour reserve, which is being on call. You could be called at 3 a.m. or you could be called at 3 p.m. You don't know. So it's just something that you have to be prepared for.
What is the best part about being a flight attendant?
Oh, there's so many good parts about it. I know I probably just went on a whole tantrum about how terrible. But there's so many good parts about it. You meet amazing people. You're in a different place all the time, having great experiences. It's great. I mean, the benefits are great. If you know you're going to use your benefits, I don't understand flight attendants that don't use their benefits because I'm like, that's a vast reason why I'm here. But I mean, because I'm a flight attendant, I've been able to wake up one morning and say I want to go on a trip internationally and ended up in Iceland 12 hours later, and paid $60 for it. So that's the amazing part of it. Is really just the opportunities. I mean, my parents fly like crazy just because they use my benefits. One of my friends, she just used my buddy pass to go on an international trip. So it's not like it's just you that benefits from your benefits. Your friends and family can benefit from it as well.
Take us through what the average day in the life of a flight attendant is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh like that because what is an average day of life? An average day of life for me, okay, I'll go over my last month. My last month, I was on AM reserve, which means I could be contacted anytime between 3 a.m. and 6 p.m. So my company has the ability for us to self-assign, which not every company does. So I love that. So we can see if there's trips available for the day you're supposed to start. So let's say I'm on reserve for 3 days starting tomorrow. I can see what's available for tomorrow. And I can see I picked a Nashville on a Saturday night and Tampa Sunday night. And I go ahead and pick that trip because it's long overnights and short legs that I have to fly that day. You're going to fly anywhere between 1, 2, 4, 5 flights a day. So I would wake up around maybe 4:30 a.m. for a 5:50 report. let's say. You're going to be on the aircraft, you're going to check in, we have our own TSA kind of, so we don't go like through the regular TSA that the general population goes through. We've been through enough background checks that we have the ability to go through a different TSA at this point, basically. So we go through that, you go to your gate, the gate agent checks your ID, you go down to your aircraft, you do all the checks on the aircraft and the equipment that you need to do. Maybe 20, 30 minutes later, you're going to start getting your passengers on board. Let's say you only work one flight that day. You take your bags down, you'll go exit the flight to get your shuttle to your hotel that is taken care of by the airline. And then you have the rest of the day to be in a city that you may have never been in before and do whatever you want. And you're still getting paid per diem while you're there. So yeah, you do that, you go to sleep and you do it again the next day.
What is next for you in general?
I almost don't want to say because I don't want to jinx it, but I absolutely have full intentions of staying within aviation. After being in it, I can't see myself being in any other industry. Absolutely love it. I love being in the air. I drive and I'm so upset. And then I get onto a plane and I'm as chill and calm and happy as can be. I have been doing a lot of research into crossing over to the other side of the door, which means like becoming a pilot possibly. So that's something I've done research into, but that might be a next move for me.
What is it like being a Black woman flight attendant?
You know, now at my current airline, which is a bigger airline, and we fly into, much bigger cities and things like that, it's very rare that there might be microaggressions sometimes, but I'm going to experience that going through the grocery store or anywhere else. I don't necessarily think it's because I'm a Black flight attendant. Now, at my old airline, a regional airline, where we flew aircrafts that you could be the only flight attendant because we have 50 seaters. And so when there's 50 seats, it'll just be one flight attendant. And you're flying to very rural airports and very rural towns and around the States. It's not as micro. And that is why, don't fault the company for that. It is one of the reasons why I'm happy I'm not there anymore. Even in the interactions, I've had at my old airline, it was me and another Black flight attendant. I'm first generation American. I'm Caribbean American. She was Caribbean. And one of the pilots just did not speak to us the entire time. He did not speak to us. And I was like, that's the most bizarre thing ever. And a flight attendant I went through training with had told me she had a similar experience like that. It'll happen. And I know if I were to cross the door, not everyone would be happy about it. So, it is a reality of it. I'm sure it holds the same in many other industries as well. But as a current Black flight attendant, I feel like I love it because I love seeing little Black kids come onto the plane. I love them seeing their first flight and I'm the flight attendant on there. I love that. That's one of my favorite things. I can tell when it's someone's first flight, even if they don't want to tell me, I can usually tell. Even if it's a grown adult, child, teenager, whatever, I appreciate when it's a child or a teenager or someone younger and it's their first flight and I'm the first flight attendant that they've ever seen.
What would you say to somebody who wants to follow in your footsteps?
I hope you love it, and do it if you love it. It can be such a great career, honestly. And it doesn't have to be too hard. The thing is, it doesn't have to be a hard career and you can get so many great benefits out of it that it's worth doing. And if you don't get it on the first try again. If you don't get it on the first try, please try again. I have a YouTube channel mainly focused to flight attendants or people that want to become flight attendants. And even today, I got one of the sweetest comments that someone was saying that I basically mentored them through it and now they've been a flight attendant for a year. And that means so much to me because I remember when I started looking for flight attendant videos, everything was like so harsh and made it seem impossible to get into. And that training was the most difficult thing they ever did in their life. And that like everything was so hectic. And while some of those things might be true, everything is what you make it. Everything is what you make it. And training doesn't have to be the most difficult thing you've ever done in your life. How many thousands of flight attendants are there in the world? And all of us made it through. So that doesn't mean it's impossible. There was one airline I just knew I wanted to work for. And now, having been in the industry, I wouldn't want to work for them. But I tried, and I tried again, and I didn't get it. And it had to be like that. I could continue to try, but I'm in a place that I'm happy with, an airline I'm completely happy with. And sometimes those not getting a certain airline is what shows you the direction of the airline you need to go into.
And what's your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is Ariel Rose International, and I talk about flight attendant information as well as just travel information, travel vlogs, and travel influencing. I mean, especially if you know you want to get into like that influencer-esque world. I'm like slightly in it, but like even if you know you want to be in like the travel influencer world, like how much better of a career could you have? I mean, at least you know your flights are taken care of. Like, just makes a little sense. So yeah, I mean, I've provided so many videos at this point of what a daily, trip, like a day in the life would look like, what a whole trip would look like. I've had vlogs up there where I show you what my day in and out looks like, where I'm getting up at 6:30 and I'm finishing at 10 p.m. Those are the realities of me trying to get home and I get diverted. I've had so many things happen on the plane and they're not all bad, and you get used to the hecticness. You get used to just change and being able to adapt. You learn how to adapt. And that's a great skill to have. And it's something that, transfers over to anything.
The last question I'll ask you is, what resources are out there?
Facebook groups are very, very helpful for knowing, and there's one with like 80,000 people in it. So you'll know which one to look for. I think it's like Flight Attendants Connect or Career Connect, something like that. Those are really helpful for knowing when to apply, because I get that question a lot and it's like, I don't know when every airline is hiring. I'm already hired, so I don't care anymore. But I don't know when they're hiring, because they usually put out an announcement like a week before, maybe days before, and then you don't know how long it'll be open for. So those usually, I think the like big founder of the biggest Facebook group page, I think she has like connects with all of the airlines at this point. And so she always knows when applications are going to open. So if you know there's specific airlines you want to work for, going ahead and making a profile for them would be a great idea to do. And just familiarizing yourself with a career in general. I mean, YouTube's a great resource for that, so that it's something you really want to do. I mean, I know plenty of flight attendants that have gone through the very strenuous process of getting hired and going through training, and they did not stay for long because it's not what they thought it was, or, the commuting got to them, or, things like that. So it is important to know the reality of the job, I think. And that I think you can find most easily through YouTube, because that's where people are going to be most real with you. So that you're not going to find, that you might find in some Facebook groups. I don't know if you want to be in those Facebook groups, but you might find it there as well.
All right, travelers, well, that concludes today's episode. First, I want to say thank you. Ariel, thank you so very much for sharing your experiences and being part of today's episode of Composure Under Fire. Travelers, let me know in the comment section who else you would like to hear from next. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the link in the description box below for the free e-course. It goes over all things travel and careers in international affairs. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and share this video with someone if you found value from it today. I know I definitely did. And until next time, travelers, let's travel with our dreams together. See you later. Bye-bye.